for joining us tonight. Today, law enforcement temporarily closed down the medical office of the son of Reza Kamali, one of the two men charged in the murder of Ron Horaney in 2016. And as KLTV7's Jamie Boyum reports, dozens of boxes of records were taken out of Dr. Kayvan Kamali's Rheumatology Associates of Longview off of Judson Road by the Gregg County Sheriff's Office. State police were also on scene.
Law enforcement took about 7 carts of boxes out of Dr. Kayvan Kamali's medical office and loaded them into a Gregg County Sheriff's Office truck. About 70 boxes were taken. The boxes were marked as records and invoices going back to 2014. Clients showing up today for appointments were told the office was closed temporarily. Dr. Kayvan Kamali is a Longview rheumatologist whose name and place of business, the Rheumatology Association of Longview, were mentioned in the arrest affidavit for Reza Kamali, 87, of Longview. Reza Kamali is suspected of involvement in the 2016 murder of Ronnie Horaney, a well-known Longview businessman. Alfredo Lizcano, 38, of Garland, and Rene Garcia are suspected of involvement as well. No word has come in from officials on the purpose or outcome of the operation. A court gag order prevents them from talking. But an arrest affidavit said the office was under surveillance during an investigation into Reza Kamali. According to the affidavit, Kamali was seen leaving that building before contacting Lizcano. Reza Kamali's affidavit stated, quote, he wanted to kill the victim up close and personal because of a family dispute, unquote. This suspicion led to an investigation beginning in June of 2016, which resulted in evidence connecting Reza Kamali to Lizcano. The document says Reza Kamali is believed to have hired Lizcano to murder Horaney. Garcia is reported to be the half-brother of Lizcano and was mentioned in the affidavit as having introduced the two. The affidavit also states Garcia is believed to have been aware of the murder since the planning stages. Jamie Boyum, KLTV 7 News.
And Reza Kamali is being held in the Gregg County Jail on a $7.5 million bond, while Lizcano is being held on a $10 million bond. Garcia is incarcerated in a federal prison on an unrelated charge. Dr. Kayvan Kamali is not charged in connection with the murder of Ron Horaney.